It's the Anime Movie Podcast with your hosts, Kat and Joe. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Anime Movie Podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Joe Welke.
I'm Kat Hamilton.
And today we are talking memories.
Memories.
All alone in anime.
No words. Those were no words.
Yes, all alone in anime.
Oh, I see. I didn't hear.
Those were total words.
Got it.
Just different weird inflections. But we're talking memories, and today we are talking part 1, Magnetic Rose, which was directed by Koji Morimoto. And what was cool about this one and what kind of piqued our interest about this one was that the screenplay was written by Satoshi Kon, who is one of our favorite anime film directors. So yeah, we're talking Magnetic Rose this time around. We're kind of separating these short films into separate episodes rather than tackle them all at once, because after watching Magnetic Rose, we immediately were like, oh, there's already so much to talk about.
There's so much to talk about with this movie.
Yeah.
And yes, screenplay by Satoshi Kon, but the original story is by Otomo Katsuhiro, who did a manga series that these films are based off of.
Okay, yeah, I was curious about that because I knew it was based off of a manga series, but are all of these films based off of the manga by that guy? I forget, what was his name?
Otomo Katsuhiro.
Were all of these stories originally a manga by him, and then directors just kind of took their liberties with it? And
yeah, so it's an anthology series. It says science fiction, but it's funny because I was going to ask you about the science fiction versus fantasy on this one. But he's the executive producer, and it's based on 3 of his manga short stories.
Okay, so that makes a bit more sense.
And he directs the second 2. Or wait, he writes one. Let me look. Fact-checking myself immediately. Yeah, so Stink Bomb is directed by Tensai Okamura, and it is written by Otomo. And then the last one, Cannon Fodder, is written and directed by Otomo.
Okay. I wonder why he wouldn't just do all 3. If he's like, I'll do the one, then I'm going to outsource.
Maybe he just had a big man crush on Satoshi Kon.
I mean, maybe.
You know?
It's hard not to. That guy is a genius.
He was just like, hey, you like my story? Can you say it better? And Satoshi Kon was like, I got you.
I've seen some of your work, Mr. Satoshi. Do some of my work. Because this came out after Perfect Blue, correct?
Yes, I believe that's correct, because this was 1995.
Oh, actually.
Is that before?
I think this
by a
is
couple
before.
years?
Yeah, this is before. I think Perfect Blue is 96.
Or 97 or something. So this is...
Fact-checking myself now.
Can you write us a fact-check jingle?
No. Perfect Blue is 1997. So yeah, this is a bit before then. This is just kind of like a screenplay debut from Satoshi Kon.
I wouldn't want to commit to that. I feel like he might have some other stuff out there, probably work on series, but maybe some of his first work on a feature. This is probably very early in his feature film work.
There we go.
I think I can feel safe saying that.
Yeah. Now you know why I said it quizzically. Yeah. Just kind of like, this is kind of his debut in film? Because we did not research it very well, I guess.
Well, we haven't talked too much about Satoshi Kon yet on the pod.
Very true. We did Tokyo Godfathers and Millennium Actress, but the rest of the works of Satoshi Kon are still in wait. So yeah, you want to possibly do a non-spoilery synopsis?
Before we started, I was thinking about this because this is a little bit difficult to do, along with, some of the other short films we've talked about, like Garden of Words and 5 centimeters per second. You kind of go, well, how do you talk about this movie without immediately spoiling it? Because with these short films, they have to delve into the plot so quickly. They have to, waste no time introducing and then get right into it. So I think that the easiest way to do a synopsis for this without actually spoiling it is just saying that there are four men who are in space on some kind of a
Like a salvage truck.
yeah, like a they talk about how they deal with sort of picking up garbage and
Yeah.
it seems like there's kind of like a space cowboy thing going on. They're worried about pirates being around and such. And they get a distress signal and they decide to go and follow it. And it's in a place which, doesn't sound ominous or anything, but it's the ship graveyard. Um, and they
Yeah.
decide to answer that SOS and go and check it out.
Yeah. And then
Don't say anything about hijinks.
and then hijinks.
They don't.
I wasn't going to say hijinks. I was going to say like ominous things start to happen. Like not everything is as it seems. This isn't a rescue mission that goes as planned. Yeah, and then it's really cool. There's like some sci-fi things going. There's some supernatural type stuff going on.
Very paranormal stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it was really interesting, and I didn't know what to expect going into this. Like I know Satoshi Kon's work, and it's a lot of his work deals a lot with illusions and memories, and not seeing things that aren't what they might be.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I know that about it, but then I didn't know that this was his film initially, or the one that he wrote the screenplay for. And so I just didn't know what to expect. And then when the plot starts happening and
it really starts happening.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy.
Absolutely. I would say that this is a psychological thriller.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly.
And it just stayed on the edge of becoming horror, like actually going straight into it. There's moments where like, oh no, this is about to start getting really, really bad. And it never really totally goes there.
Yeah.
It just stays in the super creepy zone.
Yeah, I found myself likening this Magnetic Rose to Inception.
Okay.
Like I was getting really strong Inception vibes from it. And I'll explain that obviously in spoilers, but yeah, I really dug this. I thought it was super cool.
I thought it was
very
great. I thought it was so good. I think that, again, with short stories, you can't really waste time. And the interesting thing about short stories is that they don't tend to worry about smaller themes. Usually, written short stories will focus on one big theme. And yeah, there's little motifs and things that can kind of come up, but it focuses much more on one big thing, which makes short stories particularly interesting, that kind of level of focus. And so this movie wastes no time getting into it, but it never feels like it's just dumping information on you. There's no moment of exposition. There's a couple moments in the beginning to kind of world build. And then from that point on, you're really shown what's going on. You're shown what these characters are like, even shown their backstory. And there isn't a ton of dialogue after the first part. There's not a lot of people having full conversations, at least not that often. Except in creepy dreamlands. Is that too spoilery? It might be.
Nah, there's creepy dreams happening.
Okay.
But yeah, I like the format a lot. Like 45 minutes. We were talking before we started recording that it's like kind of an awkward place in terms of the film industry. Like it's not short enough to be a short film, but it's not long enough to be a feature. So it's in this awkward middle phase. But I really enjoyed this story, and it was like I'm a comedian. Like a thing that we talk about a lot is like cutting the fat out of things and just getting it down to this like word economy and getting the joke as concise as possible. And I felt like this story was very concise. It didn't stay too long. No parts of it dragged. It was just really concise, got to the point, told the story, and then got out. And I was like, oh, thank God. This is incredible.
Yeah, and it pulls you in the entire time, much like the spaceship graveyard.
No.
Oh, the magnetism of the rose. There was something else that I wanted to say. For anyone who likes the idea of mixing AI with paranormal and space cowboys, like this is the film for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's just so cool.
It's well done. And I think sometimes when you get into the sort of psychological, it's very easy to be done badly.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have these confusing, weird, twisting around sort of plots, it's very easy to lose people. And I think it did a pretty good job of keeping you with it and making it clear and not being overly cheesy while
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah. I mean, there have been some times in Satoshi Kon's films where the blending of reality and dreams and illusions, it gets kind of confusing and it can lose some people. And you're like, I don't know what's real. And there's some elements of that in this, I feel as well, but it's easy enough to follow along. Like I was never like, what's going on? Like I always was like, okay, this is what's happening. This is what we're seeing. This is what that character's seeing, etc.
Yeah, there's like moments in a scene where you're like, oh no, what's going on? But you're
Yeah.
never like, what's going on?
Yeah, you're not like, I never like checked out. Like
Yeah.
sometimes if I'm lost, I'll just check out and be like, I'm just going to be lost. But this one, I was engaged the whole time and told a great story.
Stylistically, I was a little bit surprised that this was so early. I wasn't so much based on the fact that it's in 4:3, so it's obviously old. But it also reminded me of some of the anime that I watched as a kid, like some of the creepier, darker moments in some animes. There are very similar moments where you'd be turned away from somebody and you come back and it's somebody else. Like those are so 1990s anime to me, but in such a great way. So I had a little bit of nostalgia with this. But the animation looked really smooth.
Yeah.
Nothing was stop start. It looked like really high production value.
Yeah, like we can talk about the animation now. Like the animation, I thought it was really stellar, and the things were so intricate that they were animating too. There were some very ornate furnishings, I guess, in this, and just
Very
opulent.
opulent, yeah.
Yeah, very opulent, opulent and ornate settings. And even when it's kind of like a junkyard and there's trash stuff going on, like they're cleaning up space trash, it looks like at some points. Even the space trash looked very intricate and detailed.
Yeah.
So I have to commend them on that. That's really cool. There is no dub for this, apparently.
There is as of 2021.
Well, we watched the subtitle one, which is a rarity for us, mainly because I hate subtitles. But yeah, I don't. The voice acting was good, from what I could tell. I thought it was great. The script seemed pretty nice.
This is the first time that I've listened to Japanese and thought that it was a foreign accent speaking Japanese.
Okay.
Because I think that the four guys on the spaceship are supposed to be from different countries, but they're all speaking Japanese.
Yeah.
And with at least one of them, I was like, I think he's supposed to sound German.
Yeah. I think at one point, it seemed like it had like a little bit of like an Italian or French twinge to it, because they were telling the story of one of the characters who was Italian or French. I can't quite remember, but I know exactly what you're saying though. It sounded like a French speaker, Italian speaker, German speaker speaking Japanese.
Yeah, especially with there was a little girl, and the little girl's voice sounded a lot like that.
Yeah. Soundtrack wise, this is something that I feel like always happens in spacey movies, like movies that take place in outer space. There's a lot of opera in that, just because I think of it, people think of outer space as so majestic and large, and that for some reason opera just seems to go hand in hand with that.
I've watched a lot of 1980s movies recently, and they don't go the opera route. It's usually like synthwave before it was synthwave.
Really?
Yeah, and it's weird mechanical noises, and yeah, synthesizers.
See, when I'm thinking of space movies, and especially like this with the opera, I'm thinking of Interstellar, with that like blah, it's very operatic. There's no opera per se, like there's no opera singers.
It's like a synth opera.
Yeah, it's very orchestral.
Yeah.
But another one that I was thinking, what is it? Space something 2001.
2001 Space Odyssey.
Yeah. I was going to say Space Odyssey 2001, but knew I was fucking it up. But that song, that's one of the most famous songs in film history in that movie, and it is very orchestral. And in my mind, like when I think orchestral, I think kind of operatic. So I guess that's where the link is. That could be just me.
Yeah, I don't really connect the two because I think with opera, the vocals are really supposed to take the show over orchestral, which is where the instruments are really the main players. But I totally understand the idea of space being related to really orchestral, majestic sort of music.
Yeah. Anything else non-spoilery that you'd like to cover before
No,
we
I
hop in
would.
and spoil this mofo?
No, I mean, I think that it's very clear that both of us are amped based on our reactions at the start of this being like, I liked this.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of spoiled how amped we are.
Yeah.
We're already in spoiler territory, oh god. But yeah, we're both pretty effing amped about Magnetic Rose. So let's
Yeah.
spoil it.
Let's do it.
They wouldn't spoil this, right?
Oh,
you
God,
can't spoil this.
please
Right?
don't
spoil
Spoiler talk, anime movie podcast, spoiler talk.
So now that we've landed in the airport at the city of spoilers, and I'm looking up at those big lights, I first want to bring up there are a couple of references in this film to famous short stories,
Oh, okay.
which I found fascinating. Especially because, this feels like a short story. It's based off of a manga short story.
Now, is this something that you recognize while watching the film, or is it something that we
It's
found out when doing
one
our
of-
research?
One of them was something I recognized while watching it, which was in the subtitles. So I don't know if it's a translation from Japanese
Okay.
that was translated into an English phrase that happens to be a direct reference to a short story that's very famous, or if it was literally that in the Japanese as well. And so they, I'm not sure which that is. And then the other one, it was reading a bit more into something that I found kind of interesting. And then I stumbled upon, that's also based on a short story. And I was like, oh,
Okay.
There you
what
go.
What are the short stories? Do they relate to this current story? I don't know short stories because I don't read. I'm illiterate.
they do. And I wonder if we want to talk more about more of our way through it. And then I can reference them as we go along, or should I start it up at the top?
I feel like you could start it up at the top and we can cover both of those short stories and then.
Sure. Because I only scratched the surface on this.
Okay.
But in all likelihood, if I were to do an essay on this film in college, like I would have talked about how it relates to these short stories and the ideas of what a short story is.
Have you read these short stories before?
One of them I read in school,
Okay.
and the other one I haven't read, and I read a synopsis.
Okay.
So the first one is we get Miguel and Heinz, who are two of the salvage space guys. Salvage space guys, their official title, I'm sure. And they arrive on this mysterious ship and they're pressing buttons on an elevator, which I guess the ship has. And then another elevator starts and like comes up towards them or something. And they're standing in front of it. And Miguel says, well, what do you think? Is it going to be the lady or the tiger?
Yeah, I read that and I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah. The Lady or the Tiger is a famous short story that was first published in 1882. And essentially there's this king who's kind of barbaric, and he has this punishment where he leaves it up to the fates. So it's kind of like a flip of the coin. So if somebody does a bad thing, they go into this arena and there are two doors and they're soundproof so you can't hear what's behind them. And behind one door is a tiger, and behind the other door is a lady suited to the man.
Okay.
So the idea is if you're innocent, then the fates, the gods, will point you towards the door with the lady and you immediately get married and you go off and live your life. And obviously, therefore, if you are guilty, you pick the tiger and the tiger kills you. And the king finds out that his daughter has been canoodling with a gentleman. And so he puts the gentleman into the arena, and his daughter finds out which door has the tiger and which door has the lady. But she finds out that the lady is somebody that she was quite jealous of because she felt like she was competing for this man's attention with this lady.
Mm-hmm.
He's looking to her because he knows that she knows which door is which. And then there's this inner monologue that she has discussing which one, because she's going to lose him either way. So is she going to lose him to death or lose him to this woman that she's terribly jealous of? And it's left unknown at the end.
Okay.
But some people say that she talks a little bit more about choosing the tiger.
What a bitch.
Hey, we don't know what she chose, okay? We don't know. So so it was subtitled as, well, what do you think when this door opens? Is it going to be the lady or the tiger?
Yeah. Okay. That's pretty interesting. That'd be hilarious to like punctuate that with just you explain this very funny, not funny, but like this very intense story, and then me just being like, what a bitch.
That is your character on this podcast. So the other short story that we have is there are a couple of operatic songs that appear in this that Ava is singing.
Mm-hmm.
Is the opera star that we find on this abandoned ship. And I guess abandoned isn't the right word.
Say, quote unquote abandoned.
What should I call it? The dilapidated ship?
Yeah. I guess we could say
the
haunted.
magnetic rose. Yeah. The haunted ship. Sure. The haunted ship at the center of the ship graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple of songs that she sings that are from famous operas.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them that's repeated a couple of times is from Madame Butterfly.
Okay.
And Madame Butterfly is based on a short story. The opera itself is based on a short story. And this one is rough. I think I was on the couch like reading about it, and I was just like, oh God, out loud, which you might have heard me.
I did when I was doing my research. I just hear Kat over on the couch just like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh geez.
Just like that. So, I mean, the first thing is that this came out in 1904, the first time that the play was put on. And the idea is that an American is stationed in Japan and he is going to marry this 15-year-old Japanese girl. That was my first, oh no.
Hey, different times, different ages of consent.
But he wanted her as a placeholder until he could find an American wife.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And he gets her pregnant and he leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And for 3 years, she's waiting for him and like decorating the place for him. And her sort of handmaiden's like, he's not coming back. Like, you need to start moving on.
Yeah.
And she doesn't believe him or believe them. And then she gets word from like this guy was trying to marry her off again. And she kept being like, no, he's coming back. You know, I can't get married again. And that was the other detail, is that apparently the divorce laws in Japan were very lax compared to what they were like in America. So it's like, oh, I can get married and easily divorced if, you know. And so this matchmaker who keeps trying to marry her off says that this guy is coming back. And he has a letter that he's reading to her, but he can't handle finishing the letter to tell her why the guy's actually coming back. Because she's so excited about the fact that he's coming. And then he shows up with his wife, his American wife, and hasn't met his son before. And he's coming up to the house, and then he sees that it's all decorated and all that, and he knows that it's for him, and he can't handle it. So he leaves his wife to tell her.
What a coward. What
Right?
a piece of shit guy.
And then she says that she's like, because Kate wants to raise the child. And
Kate's the American wife.
the American wife. And the woman's called Butterfly. Or her name is, it translates as Butterfly. And
Mariposa.
yeah, if it was Spanish. And she says that she's willing to give up her son if she can just see the man again. And then she blindfolds her child. She goes behind a screen and she kills herself with her dad's sword.
Jeez. So did the guy just not want to see her? Like wait, what happens in the end? She's like, I will give you the son if I can see the dad again. But then the dad just doesn't show up, so she kills herself.
Basically, yeah.
Wow. It's fucking brutal, dude.
It was so brutal. That's why I was audibly making sounds on the couch.
That's very sad. Intensely sad.
Yeah, very intensely sad. Yeah, there's no real silver lining there at all.
Now, do you think either of those short stories relate to the plot of this Magnetic Rose at all?
I think they do. I mean, I think we have this operatic singer who's always kind of waiting for her husband to come back, or has this delusion of this love that she had for a man who didn't seem to be as into it as she was.
Yeah.
Because he refuses to marry her. Also, like leading back to that Lady or the Tiger situation, I think there's this idea of like, wait, is she a lady or a tiger?
That's what I was going to say.
And there's even like, because I clocked that early, and then they show the sort of news reports, like newspaper headlines come up. And it said fierce tigress escapes.
Yeah.
So on the newspaper, it calls her a tigress. And I was like,
Yeah. She is both the lady and the tiger.
Exactly.
That's very interesting. That's so, dude, I'm so glad that you read things, because I would have never picked up on that. And I was just like, I didn't understand why is it a lady or a tiger. That's really stupid and weird. So thanks for being smart.
You're welcome.
And providing some context for that. That's very...
Those degrees are finally coming in handy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's... and then I'm going to be like, yeah, it reminded me of Inception. That's why that... But let's do a bit more of like spoilery plot stuff going on before we get into other... where we see inspiration in other works of art. So it's, as we said in the non-spoiler, it's these, I guess, like trash men, kind of garbage junker type dudes that collect junks, and they get, paid handsomely if they find valuable things on those ships that have been junked. As much so they could buy houses in California. It's so funny. This takes place in 2092, and people are still fantasizing about buying houses in California.
Hey, listen.
I mean, the real estate market here is rough. So you have to go to space in order to afford a house out here.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, like we said, they get an SOS call, and they start to go to the ship graveyard, and this ship is way fucked up. It's very dilapidated. There's
a nice moment where they're debating whether or not they should really go back.
Exactly.
Like, to see what this SOS signal is about. And then they kind of bring up like, it's the Mariner's Code. We can't be saved by a ship later if anything happens to us if we don't help a ship in need. Mm-hmm. That you get kind of like blacklisted. And I was like, that's kind of a good idea.
Yeah, it's kind of like, there's a camaraderie out there, which is nice. But the ship graveyard, I think, is it because there's a magnetic field right there, or there's just a magnetic field there and that's what causes ships to crash and wreck there?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I mean, the first time they talk about the magnetic field, it seems like they're like, oh, check the magnetic field right now. How's it doing? And I don't know if they just mean generally everywhere you go, you have to check the magnetic field in 2092.
Yeah.
Or if that specific area has a lot of magnetism that can screw your stuff up.
Yeah, I took it as like that specific area had a magnetic field,
and that's why it's such a big ship graveyard.
Yeah, and
I'd buy that.
Yeah. So they go.
I mean, we just watched it, but they probably explained that in about 30 seconds.
Yeah. I mean, they probably explained it while we were both taking notes or something, or none of us had our eyes on the subtitles. But yeah, well, let's just go with that area. Let's decide that even if it's wrong, we know what's right, and it's the area that has the magnetic field.
What matters is the ideas that we build on top of it.
Exactly.
You know?
That's not even the most important part. That's just kind of like a whatever.
Yeah.
But the magnetic field is dangerous, and it can blow up ships or destroy them. So there's an element of danger for them going into this SOS. So once they go into the ship, though, that's when all the freaky shit starts happening.
Yeah, of course, it doesn't it doesn't start out too freaky. It starts out being like, oh, there's oxygen here, and oh, there's gravity. So they end up being weighted down, and so they're not floating around anymore. And then when they actually sort of step into this elevator door, they're led into this massive, opulent ballroom.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this film has a lot of anachronism in it,
Okay.
as in there's a lot of things that are in the wrong time period.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, this opulent, amazingly beautiful ballroom and this ornate Baroque sort of painting of this woman, this portrait, it looks Elizabethan.
Yeah.
But of course, we're in space. So there's this juxtaposition of the opulent Elizabethan thing with we're in space
Yeah.
with these like, sort of raider junk salvage guys. And then I don't really understand why the opera singer would be from that time period, especially if she's singing Madame Butterfly. That didn't come out until 1904.
Yeah, I think that it said that she was alive in 2005 or something like that.
There's a bouquet of roses and has a note on it, and it's dated 2005.
Yeah. But also it's noted that it seems like she's been alive for a long time as well. And I don't know, there was some kind of fountain of youth type thing going on.
You think so?
No, I mean, not actually like she stayed young forever, but it seemed like there were multiple time periods because in the portrait, that style of dress wasn't popular in 2005. She was wearing very like a hoop dress almost.
Yeah, I
in the
think Marie
portrait.
Antoinette.
Yeah. So it didn't match the time period, like unless in 1995 they thought that we were going to go back to Marie Antoinette fashion.
I mean, maybe if she's in her stage dress, she
Okay.
might be dressed like that. But it seemed like, they went into a walk-in closet and all the dresses were like that.
Yeah.
And they kind of find out that she's been dead for a while.
Oh, Ava? She's been dead for 30 years.
There hasn't been an opera singer around here in about... Why? We haven't seen one of those. And
What? Dun, dun, dun.
But essentially they said that her lover was murdered and she looked distraught about it. But there was also a little bit of some suspicion on her because they had a bit of a falling out because he wouldn't marry her.
Mm-hmm.
And she wanted a way to be with him forever. So it kind of sounds to me like she probably killed him and then went up into her big Sunset Boulevard style mansion in space to live out her days alone with these holograms and to invite men into this place to become her new Carlo. This also, has such strong Siren of the Sea.
I was just about to say that. I was like, Eva's like a space siren.
She is literally. She is a singer who sends out an SOS that is beautiful music that lures men into this place, and then she traps them there forever and seduces them.
Yeah, there's so much going on in this 45-minute short film. Like, it's insane. It's so impressive.
Yeah.
Like, all of the references and meaning and plot that is just in this truncated time is crazy. And going back to your anachronism thing too, there's technology, there's robots that are even very Baroque and old looking. Like they have these cherub statue robots that are flying all around that are creepy as hell. And
they were the first big nope of the movie.
Exactly. But yeah, once they start to get into the ballroom, that's when all the hallucinations and illusions and AI hologram type things start happening.
I kind of like this idea that there's all these things that are gilded, and gilded doesn't mean solid gold. It means just layered with gold at the top so that the entire thing appears to be gold.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that entire ship, every hologram is basically like the gilding in that Baroque hall.
Yeah, and this is where I feel like the Satoshi Kon tinge gets put in there because it's bending reality and you aren't trusting what you see and you can't trust what you see because what happens is Miguel sees what he thinks is a projection or a hologram of the woman Eva, and he's like running to save her because they're on the ship for an SOS. But then he walks into it and it looks like a hologram because he's like half in it and half out of it. And his partner Heinz, who is on the mission with him, is like, "Oh, what's the matter? You never seen a hologram before?" But then as things start to keep unfolding, then you don't know what's real, what's a hologram, what's in the imagination, what's a memory. And that's where it gets very skewed and interesting and just so cool.
Yeah.
I love that. And it's confusing, but it's meant to be confusing. And you can just sit back and enjoy it. And you don't need to think too hard on it because it's like, oh, this is supposed to be confusing. It's right that I'm confused. Nothing is real.
That's interesting because Miguel is, they kind of make him seem really lecherous and like a bit of a playboy at the beginning. And he's holding
He's like wearing a Speedo in outer space. It's like, bro.
But at the beginning, he pulls out a picture like out of his wallet and, it's the upper half of a lady and her nipples are showing and stuff. And he's like, "Oh, I can't wait to get back to you." And then he says the name and he's like, "Or maybe I should go to Catherine." Like, oh,
And
I've
you were
got
like,
two
me?
choices.
You were like, he's coming back to me.
Don't want that man.
You don't want a mullet Speedoed man?
No, thank you. Who
okay,
can't
well.
decide between women. When he pulls it out, he goes, "Oh, sweet memories." And it's kind of the first time memories are mentioned. But it's interesting that he's the one who ends up being sort of pulled into this siren's web because he seemed to be planning on choosing between two ladies when he went home. And immediately he was like seduced into this whole different hologram world.
I mean, as soon as I saw him in the thong and how goofy he was, I was like, oh, this dude's
He's
dying.
dying first.
This dude's dying.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I knew as soon as like he was being a goofball, and they were just doing really stupid things. Like one of the things that annoys a lot of people that watch movies about outer space is once they get to a planet and they take off their helmet and they're like, "Oh, oxygen's here." Like you don't know what else is there,
I checked for radiation.
Yeah, I
They
mean,
did some checks.
But then Miguel, like, he goes to the dinner lunch thing that the robot cherub came and
Invited
told
them
them,
to.
told them about. And he's like, "Oh, pop off my helmet. Oh, I'm gonna drink some of this wine." It's like, bro, take it easy. Like, you don't know. Like, you're here on an SOS. Obviously, something is amiss.
Yeah.
Don't just sit down and start eating food that you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean that gave me such like Pan's Labyrinth vibes, where I was just thinking about the man with no eyes who's down in that banquet hall, and you just know she shouldn't eat the grapes.
It gave me like Prometheus / Alien Covenant vibes because they land on this alien planet and then they're like, "Oh, let's just take our helmets off," and then it's like, dude, you don't know. There could be some kind of spores going around, some kind of virus.
Yeah.
You don't know. But I mean, I guess they are on a spaceship, but you're there for an SOS. You're there for a reason. There is an emergency happening. You don't know what it could be. It could be a gas leak. Who knows?
Couldn't you see this as a Disneyland ride?
Oh.
Because you'd be doing.
I think it's a little too heady for a Disneyland ride.
Well, I mean, they reduce things quite a lot. It's yes, I know Disneyland rides are very reductionist when it comes to the plot of a film, but I mean, just going into the ballroom and stuff just made me think of when you're on a Disneyland ride and you go into this like amazing like set dressed place, and then you'll like go off into some dark floaty whatever. But that was a side note. I think the archetype of Ava is such an old, prototypical female character that usually turns sour.
How do you mean? Is it? You think it's kind of like a femme fatale type thing, or is it?
It's
more
not
the
quite
siren?
the femme fatale. It's the siren thing, but it's more like the beautiful has-been.
Oh, okay.
Who can't handle that she's a has-been.
There's a lot of that out here in LA, baby.
Sure. Yeah. The aging prom queen.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, and this gave me such big like Sunset Boulevard vibes, because you have this aging actress who used to be so beautiful and lives in this big mansion on her own and is manipulative and frightening, but it's just like the loss of that beauty, which is how she built her identity, and that's not there anymore. And suddenly she starts becoming invisible and isn't the center of attention, and she has no idea what to do. So her brain goes into fantasy land. And also reminds me, I was thinking about Mrs. Havisham as well, just because Mrs. Havisham, is a, like, just lives in a wedding dress for the rest of her old age and cannot get over.
You have dropped so many references that I am not privy to.
Okay.
You went with those 2 short stories, which obviously I'm not going to know.
Sure.
You went Sunset Boulevard, which I've never seen. Pan's Labyrinth, which I've never seen. I don't know who Miss Vash is.
Mrs. Havisham.
I'm lost right now. I'm just like nodding along. I think you can see it in my eyes.
I could see it in your eyes with Pan's Labyrinth, which surprised me because I think you'd fucking love that movie.
I probably would. You know what this also reminded me of, which is much sillier and less intelligent than a lot of the things that you just referenced.
Okay.
But that movie that we watched together with Bruce Willis and Goldie Hawn, and it's not Meryl Streep, the other lady. Oh, fuck.
I'm struggling.
Death Becomes Her.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yes.
It has a little bit of like Death Becomes Her, where it's like they can't let go of that beauty or that youth, so they're trying to do anything to maintain it.
Yeah.
And this deals more with like a lover that.
Yeah, but she also, all of the holograms only have her at one age.
Yeah. And we see later on in the film that she's not that age anymore.
So, yeah. So I think that she was living through that hologram.
Yeah.
And never losing her beauty and just wanting to be in this one point in time forever, which is probably when she was really blissfully happy or felt really blissfully happy, where she was beautiful, she was famous, she had this amazing voice and this man that she was totally deeply in love with. And then she loses the voice, she loses the man, and then she starts to lose her beauty.
Well, she also starts to lose the adoration of the public, because once she loses her voice, she starts to try and be a dancer. And based on the news articles and history that we get of Ava, it's like the public kind of turns on her and they start to be a lot more critical of her performances because she can't sing, I guess.
Yeah. And there's such a big mix of sort of, technological anxiety type of psychological thriller through the AI and hologram technology, and then genuinely very paranormal, unexplained by science kind of activity as well. Miguel's walking down a hallway and he looks up and there's a statue on the ceiling and it is crying blood.
Mm-hmm.
There's this little doll girl who like melts through the ceiling at some point, which freaked me out. I was just like, that was the point where I was like, no.
Yeah.
This is about to get so scary and so awful. And it doesn't totally go there because she kind of runs away. But
well, that's where I think the mind trick is, because we saw the robot cherub people, robot things, inviting them to the luncheon. So we're like, oh, okay, that's obviously a robot, like whatever. Then we see the girl, which you then kind of are like, wait, is that a robot? But then she just drops from the ceiling and then disappears and moves.
So creepy.
Unlike a robot. So it's like, okay, that can't be a robot, but I'm trained to believe that there are robots here. So my first assumption was robot. But this is something different.
That was something different, for sure.
Absolutely.
And there's a couple of other moments of that. And then it seems like Heinz gets kind of pulled into his own memory.
Mm-hmm.
So Miguel is going off with Ava in some garden and acting like they're lovers. And at the same time, Heinz ends up on a stage where there's a bunch of people clapping. And it's almost like he's in Ava's memory. Like he walks into her memory. And then she goes up to him and stabs him. That makes him kind of faint. And then he goes into his own memory and you find out that this family man who talks about his daughter earlier, that his daughter definitely died.
Yeah. So here's what I think is going on with the stage and the Miguel thing. Miguel is voluntarily walking into her world. He's seduced by the siren song. He's
Yes.
just voluntarily like,
Oh, he's in.
he's in. He'll just walk in because number one, he's a horn dog.
Sure.
Number two, he's trying to do like the SOS. I'm here to save somebody. So it has to be this lady because who else would be sending out the SOS? So I think that he's just immediately seduced and walks right into it.
And he thinks she's a babe.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, he says it. That's a quote.
That's a quote.
And I was like, I didn't know I was in this movie. Total fucking babe. But I think that Heinz is a lot more skeptical. And he's like, I don't think I'm seeing all of this stuff. Like, this isn't real.
He starts to catch on.
Yeah.
And he can start to kind of intellectualize it and get out of the sort of optical illusion of it.
So instead of him voluntarily walking into her world, she takes him into her world with that stabbing and the like putting him on the stage because he knows what's up. He knows something's fishy here. Miguel is just an idiot. And then so when she pulls Heinz into her world, that's when she starts to like really fuck with his memory because she didn't need to do it to Miguel because he was already going for it. But she needs to torment Heinz a little bit with his own painful memories in order to pull him in and suck him in and tempt him into her world.
I mean, she realizes that it's not going to work to get him to stay for her.
Yes.
But she knows what would tempt him to stay, and that is if he could get his daughter back. Because there's an implication that he feels like his daughter's death is his fault.
Yes.
She gets out on the roof with a spaceman costume that he bought for her, and you see her fall off the roof.
Yeah, and she's constantly talking about how she wants to go to outer space with her dad, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we can totally go to space." They have a rocket wind, like a wind compass or something, where they show you which way the wind is blowing, and part of the memory is the dad is going up to fix the rocket wind compass. I don't know what that thing is called.
I can't remember what it's called either.
Yeah,
but I find the wind compass entertaining.
Hey, I'm doing the best that I can. So that thing was broken, and she brings up that it's broken. The daughter does, Emily. And so the dad is going up to fix it. And part of the memory is that she goes to go up and help him or be like, hey, I'm going to outer space with you. And then she falls off of the roof to her death, we find out later. And this is where I think the Inception vibe comes in. Because if you saw Inception.
Yes.
I mean, that's a whole reason why Cobb, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, is afraid to go too deep into the Inception world because his ex-wife is always tempting him with like this life where he can live with his daughter. And that's exactly what Ava's doing with Heinz, where it's like, oh, we're here. You can stay here with us forever. And he's tempted a little bit before he's like, wait, fuck, no, my daughter's dead. And he's reminded because he sees the picture from his wallet. And that's kind of, I guess, his totem to make him realize like, oh, this isn't real. My daughter's dead. And so that's when I was like, oh, okay, so this is Inception. I bet you Christopher Nolan's probably a big fan of this film.
Could be. Totally could be. I think some of that is a little bit tropic, but the parallels are good.
Yeah. I mean, it totally matches up with like, you can come to this quote unquote like phantom zone type thing, limbo-esque place where you'll be happy, but it's not real.
Yeah.
But Miguel just walks right into it because he's dope. He doesn't have a totem. His totem is his thong, and you can't see it inside of his spacesuit. You can see those parallels, but this predates Inception, obviously, by like 20,
yeah, like
25 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's real cool. Like the temptation, the psychological stuff, and you don't know who's going to give into the temptation or who's going to, or if like Heinz is going to be able to save Miguel because Miguel's so far gone. It's just so tense.
How about let's get titular for a moment.
Titular. Let's get titular.
Okay. Magnetic Rose. What do you get from that?
So at the end of the film, when we zoom out and see all of the debris of the ships, it's in the shape of a rose. There's a lot of roses in this film as well. Like we see one of the hallucinations or illusions or machinations of the mind that Miguel falls for and that's the first time where Miguel's like, hey, what's going on? Something's fishy here, is when Ava is at like a dinner party and everyone's kind of surrounding her. And then she stands up, she's holding a bouquet of roses and walks over, and then she places them on the table. And then once Hines arrives, everybody disappears. And he's like, wait, what the hell
And the
just
flowers
happened?
stay fresh.
And the
for a
flowers
little
stay
while.
fresh. And he's like, no, Ava was just here. And that's when you start to really get the like, something's fishy here, because a hologram can't move physical objects. So then Hines, which is that dose of reality, he comes over, picks up the bouquet of roses, and they just crumble to dust.
Yeah.
And there's so many things crumbling to dust in this ship that, like, you have to know something's up, Miguel. Like,
There's a lot of melty things happening as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time roses kind of come up is when Miguel sees her out in the grass in the hologram, and she's just outside of a rose garden. And they keep going back to the rose garden together.
Yeah. And obviously there's like a magnetic field, but then there's also the double entendre of she's a magnetic presence that's drawing people in, and like the siren song type thing where it's drawing people in.
It's interesting because it kind of reminds me of the every rose has its thorn thing. That, oh, it's beautiful, draw you in, but if you grab it, you'll be bleeding, as the old phrase
You be bleeding.
But I feel like it's almost like they're like, it'd be really lame to call this like the rose and its thorns.
Yeah.
Like, let's think more robot-y, more spacey. What do you guys think?
Well, then there's also the addition of she's always portrayed in a red dress, which is like another rose.
Well, she is
type
the
thing.
rose,
Yeah.
of course. And then in the end with Miguel as Carlo, she's kind of making him say things about how the roses remind him of her. And then, oh God, I was so annoyed. And she's like, you mean you're not thinking about me all the time?
Yeah.
You spend enough time not thinking about me that a rose could remind you of me because you'd forgotten about me for a second. I was like, wow, that's another level.
Typical clingy chick. We got a stage 5 clinger out here.
Oh my God. But I mean, those are some high expectations of levels of attention.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like, dude, I got to work. Sorry, I'm not thinking about you constantly, but I got this project that I'm working on at
We'll
work.
starve. If I won't be able to eat if I'm just thinking about you.
Yeah. I did like the reveal, though, at the end where it's just you get a shot of her just corpse, or not even corpse, just skeleton, because she's been dead for so long and just floating out there that, I don't know. So do you think it was like a spirit that was haunting that space vessel?
I think there's a little bit of both things going on. And I think that's why we get some paranormal activity in here, and why we also kind of have, a central AI system in this, future technology where it's building up this fantasy world for somebody to be living in. And that person is long since dead, but it is still projecting a lot of this stuff. And I guess you could go as far as being like, oh, maybe she's literally haunting haunting this on a digital level, that she's kind of become a part of the ship. And so she's kind of half AI, half lonely ghost.
Well, that's a kind of like a Prometheus Alien Covenant type thing too, because the character David is this AI robot that's meant to aid the human people.
The humans.
Aid the human people.
I've heard of them. Yes, go on.
He's meant to aid them on their quest to discover a new planet or whatever. But then he starts to get his own sentience and agency, and then he starts to live on the planet alone and start to do experiments and all of these type things and create new life, because his thing is like, I'm a robot, so I can't physically create life, so I'm going to experiment, and it'll be like my own version of creating life. And so that, does it relate? Did I just go on a thing where it doesn't relate to this movie at all?
I'm not sure it added a lot, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
But I feel like I should have said at the top that this is like a good episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yes. Yes, Black Mirror or something.
Yeah.
It's so good. And I love the confusion of it all because you don't know, like, even in the end, I don't know what was real, what was AI, what was a hologram. But what makes it so good is I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, usually, I'm really nitpicky about plot points and like, how come this isn't explained? This is a good type of confusion where it's like, it left me wondering, but I'm intrigued enough to be like,
Yeah.
okay.
I had one moment when the space cannon hits this ship and Heinz is being pulled out. And I was like, he would immediately freeze.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And he's like holding on to the edge like this is a cliff.
Yeah.
Please, you're dead.
Yeah.
And then, he's floating out in space and he's able to like blow a little rose petal around in his helmet.
Yeah.
So, which is, it's a weirdly calm, pleasant ending, which is actually more horrifying than anything else because I don't think those other two guys are coming back.
No, those guys died. Definitely. The magnetic rose, the magnetic field like fucked up their ship.
Oh, you think they also died? I thought they hit
definitely
it with a
died.
cannon and left.
They hit it with a cannon, but then you see that the magnetic field like tears their ship apart.
Oh, I didn't see that. I didn't
Yeah.
notice that. Okay.
Yeah, the corona.
So he's
Dun,
the
dun,
corona.
dun.
So he's the only one, Heinz, at the end who's alive.
Yeah, but not for long.
Not for long. No.
I think that is the most horrifying death, just being
Oh.
alone in space.
Or yeah.
Like, I know that you said it's calm, and there is a bit of calm and just resignation to the end once you're there and you're in that position, but it is hard just knowing like, I'm going to starve.
I mean, I just think that the film doesn't call attention to how horrifying what's happening to him is because they've kind of made it seem like, oh, look, he escaped. Like he survived. And then he's looking at a rose petal and, blowing it around. I mean, honestly, I would spend some time meditating on my life and then I would take off that helmet.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely.
That's how that would go.
Yeah.
I'm not waiting around to starve.
No, fuck that.
No way.
How do you think it'd be more painful to starve or to just freeze to death?
Well, with the temperature as it is in space, you would freeze so quickly.
You wouldn't even realize.
You probably wouldn't even, yeah. How long would your brain keep firing for to send any information to your body to know it was in pain? Or
Yeah, good point.
it'd probably be horrifically painful for 0.5 seconds.
Yeah. Then it's over though.
Yeah,
All right, yeah. Good argument.
that's what I think.
I agree with you. You've convinced me.
Oh, good.
I was already on your side, but you convinced me.
Those are the best arguments to
you've-
try and have with you, the ones where I agree with you already.
You've bolstered my already held opinion.
And I thought it was kind of cool when they shot that ship with the cannon and then you see the other bodies of the previous sailors who washed up onto the Sirens shores.
Yeah, I also thought it was so freaky when, when Heinz is trying to save Miguel and pull him away from going into the temptation in the siren song, and then all of these statues of other people keep getting in his way, and then Ava's like, why are you trying to get him away? Like, he's going to be happy. Like, it's fine. And he's like, no, but this isn't real. It was so good. Like, I don't even know what I'm talking. Like, it was so good that I don't even know what I'm talking about. I just want to bring up other parts of the movie and be like, and that part was good, and that part was good, and that part was good.
I'm so sad that Satoshi Kon died.
I know.
I want so much more from him. I want
know.
so much more. And that's selfish. I understand.
Yeah.
But also, he was still working on something when he was dying and he knew he was dying and he still worked on it.
Yeah, it was kind of selfish of him to die.
Oh my God.
If we're going to be real here. Obviously kidding.
God, I wonder who could carry on his legacy. But I hadn't known about that director. I hadn't heard of the director who worked on this.
Yeah, I hadn't either. Do we know if he worked on anything else in the future? Because a little bit of this also kind of reminded me of Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah, I could see that.
Where, the animation looked pretty similar to me, at least. Which could make me think that, like, this might be Koji Morimoto might have directed Ghost in the Shell.
I want to flash back for a second to talk about it's Miss Havisham, not Mrs. Havisham.
Wow.
Very, very specifically.
How rude.
Because she's from Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. But what I didn't remember is that she was jilted at the altar.
Oh, just kind of
And she-
like the Ava.
Yeah. And she insists on wearing her wedding dress for the rest of her life.
So Koji Morimoto, he's an anime director, but a lot of his stuff is like as a key animator. So he's the key animator in Akira. He is the key animator in shorts called Robot Carnival, Short Piece, and The Animatrix. And he was the key.
Oh, he did Animatrix stuff?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And he was the key animator in Kiki's Delivery Service,
Oh.
City Hunter, and Fist of the North Star, which is a series, I believe. But
none of that is very recent.
yeah, none of it also is Ghost in the Shell. So was definitely wrong about that. But yeah, I mean, good stuff, man. Just good stuff all around. The animation, the story. I mean, it was just, I was gripped. It was thrilling. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say.
I'm excited about I'm excited to watch the rest of these.
I'm not
It's-
because I read the
Will it never
reception
live up to the first one?
said that the first one is definitely the best one.
Okay.
It's the most well reviewed of the three.
Right.
But I still have faith that the other two will be good, but it might not live up to the heights of Magnetic Rose, which is super high. I mean, it's just not fair. Like, like, they should have made this one the headliner. Like, you can't start out with a bang and then get worse and worse, you know?
Yeah.
That's such a
Or maybe put the really good one in the center. Put it in the middle.
yeah, I mean,
I guess if you're watching them all in a row.
yeah, that's probably how it's meant to be. But
Yeah.
even then, you'd still be like, oh, well, I mean, that one was all right. And then the next one, you're like, I mean, that was okay too. But like Magnetic Rose, I could be wrong. Maybe we'll absolutely love the other two. But so far, this compilation, compendium, whatever you want to call it, starts off with a bang with Magnetic Rose.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we crank our amps?
Yeah. Yeah, let's crank them.
Should we just say it at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. Wait.
Do we have the same one?
I mean, all right, let's do it. Let's do it 3, 2, 1, say it at the same time.
So do we do 3, 2, 1, and then the beat after one we say it?
So here, I'll give an example. So it'd be like 3, 2, 1, rock.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
All right, here we go. 3,
3, 2, 1, 11.
Yeah,
I knew it.
11 out of 11, dude. It was so fucking good.
Yeah, it's great.
Everything fit. Like the music, the animation, everything was good. It was short. It told the whole story. I was engaged the whole time. I can't even criticize like the voice acting. And that's the thing is like, even though I didn't understand what they were saying just from the voice acting perspective, the voice acting wasn't bad. Like I knew that it was good voice acting.
Yeah.
It was so good. It was so fucking good.
I think it's funny that this is the second 11 that you've given to a film we've watched subtitled.
That's very true. That is interesting. Perhaps I should watch more things subtitled.
Maybe you should.
Wait, did I give it? I gave it 11 to something else, didn't I? Ponyo.
Yeah, you gave it to Ponyo, and that we did watch dubbed.
Yeah.
And then your two other 11s were for the subtitled films that we watched.
I think that this one just like, I love things that don't stick around too long or drag.
Yeah.
Like that's what I think the worst part about certain American series or sitcoms, and that's what I love about anime series so much, is that a lot of times it's a truncated story. It's only 25 episodes and there's not a lot of filler.
And I think part of the reason why you like those kind of series that have, say, 25 episodes is because the series isn't built to keep going. The series is built to tell one story.
Yes. And like I said, I think I told this to you before, the only American series that I felt like was like an anime series was The Good Place.
Yeah.
Because it told a long story over 50 something episodes and then it was complete. And it's just like, excellent. Great. I don't like things that stick around too long and wear out their welcome. There was no filler in Magnetic Rose. There's no filler. It's just the story. Nothing weird was going on.
And it's not being made to be open to a sequel.
Yes.
Or to have a series made out of it.
Yes. It's perfect. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
it's great.
11 out of 11.
11 out of 11 from both. That's a first for us.
That is a first for us.
Hey.
Look at us.
Yeah.
I'm glad this one won the tournament tonight.
Me too. Me too.
All right. Shall we wrap it up, or do you have anything else to add?
I'm happy to wrap this up.
All right. Well, thank you guys and gals and all.
Look on your face.
Guys, gals, and everyone else in between.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for listening to our episode on Memories Part 1 Magnetic Rose. This is history. The first double 11. Thanks for listening. Check out our YouTube channel. We post clips there. Just search for the Anime Movie Podcast. It should come up. And follow us on social media at the Anime Movie Podcast. And if you want to email us or with some suggestions or something like, hey, you really like Magnetic Rose, you should check out this movie. It is the Anime Movie Podcast at gmail.com. Any final words? Kat Hamilton.
Feels like a lot of pressure, but my final thing is rest in peace, Satoshi Kon.
Yeah, definitely.
What a man.
Rest in power. Rest in creativity.
Mm.
All right. See you next time. Later.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Anime Movie Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at the Anime Movie Podcast, and you can reach out via email at the Anime Movie Podcast at gmail.com. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell a friend. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.